owns that area that that big giant boulder is sitting on. So that's what we're trying to look for. When you offer them something larger than normal, you're after the larger than normal fish. I mean, we hear it all the time, the bigger the bait, the bigger the bass. That absolutely holds true. And there's a couple tricks to that swim bait style fishing, whether it's a big live bait, a giant musky bait like that, or just a 6-inch swim bait. The biggest piece of advice I can give you when targeting those larger than normal fish is to try to fish that swim bait uphill. What I mean by that, and all of us are guilty of it, we will launch our boat, a brand new Nitro Z20, on the lake, and the first thing we'll do is we'll go in the pre-spawn phase. Days are getting longer, we're getting more light penetration, the fish are in the pre-spawn phase. The first thing we do when we launch our boat is we go to our favorite bank that we've been catching fish on for the last 5-10 years or whatever it is. We all do it. What I like to do is go to that favorite bank or that favorite isolated piece of cover, and instead of setting my boat up exactly one cast off of the bank, they're bass relate to the bank most of the time in the spring. Instead of setting my boat up one cast length off, casting to the bank and swimming my swim bait or a big spinner bait out off the bank, and only having that lure in the strike zone or in the fish's zone there for the first 5 or 6 reel handles of the retrieve, and then that swim bait comes out off the bank, and then there's just this nice little drop off here, and you're really only effective if you set your boat up one cast length off the bank. You're only effective for the first 5 or 6 feet of that cast, and then you're out here in the abyss. The swim bait's out here in the abyss. Sometimes big fish will follow the swim bait or spinner bait off the bank, and then you literally pull the fish off of the cover, and it's, a lot of times it won't bite. It'll just swim down underneath the boat, and then it's over here in the abyss for, guys like him to shake a minnow on, and so those are very hard to catch. So instead of setting your boat up one cast length off the bank, what I love to do is positioning this Nitro Z21 on the bank, almost like you're touching the rocks, touching that riprap dam, touching that single isolated dock or laydown, and casting out to where most people will have their boat set up. Casting out and working your swim bait uphill triggers more bites for me all across the country than anything. I mean, that's like the secret sauce of swim bait fishing. Whenever you look at Instagram or Facebook, big swim bait photos from California, Florida, Texas, whatever it is, most of the time those swim bait fish are caught 1.5 to 2 feet off the bottom, swam uphill. I mean, think about it. If your boat is over here on the structure or on the bank, you're casting out, you're letting your swim bait fall, 4 feet, 8 feet, 12 feet, and then start your retrieve uphill. You have the whole duration of that cast for that 7 or 8 pounder that has been around the block a time or two. She has seen a million crankbaits, seen a million jigs. You're trying to make this thing look as real as possible and to keep it in that strike zone along the bottom as long as possible. A lot of times, as that swim bait is swimming uphill towards that isolated piece of cover, that fish will see it somewhere along that 15 to 3 foot range, follow it up, it looks right, it feels right, it looks like a giant gizzard shad. It's a larger offering than a small crankbait. She doesn't want to expend a bunch of energy. She's been cold for the last 2 months. She's just slowly swimming up, and as that swim bait is swimming uphill towards a piece of cover, she feels like she's got that thing pinned up against the bottom, up against the bank, or up against that isolated boulder there that my boat is sitting right next to. So it's little things like that, angle changes. So the guy that's sitting out here casting to the bank, he may catch a fish or two, but in order to get that difference making bite, that 4 pounder, that 5 pounder that you guys have up here, these guys on tour, there's 100 guys on tour that think about things like that. And that's what sets them apart from, the regular fishermen. Just angle changes, the speed of your retrieve. Those are the types of things that we consider, where the channel swings up against that isolated boulder. I encourage everyone here to take it one step farther than just setting your boat up one cast off the bank and cast to the bank and fishing all of your favorite banks. Use the wind to your advantage. I always like fishing the lower portions, the lower sections of the lake. That's usually their deepest, clearest water. That's usually where the biggest fish in the lake live, depending on the time of year. But clearer the water, the better, with the swim baits, with the jerk baits, with those big fish style techniques. Another thing too is we've been hearing a long time from our friend Kevin Van Dam. the wind, man. Use the wind to your advantage. Whether you're throwing the jigs, the crankbaits, the jerk baits, when the wind blows on a bank with an isolated boulder or laydown, it breaks up the light penetration. It mixes up the sediment in the water. More shad, more gizzard shad, more bluegill. Things are just happening on windy banks. So whenever you have a bank along the left side here and you have a perpendicular wind to that bank, that just gives that 4, 5, 6 pound bass more confidence in the feeding in that area because more is going on. Light penetration's broken up. There's more current action. There's just more things happening on windy style banks opposed to that nice, comfortable, flat, no windy type bank. There's just more life on windy banks. Yes, it's a little more it's a little more pain in the butt to fish and position your boat, but that's what spot lock's for. Spot lock your boat and go ahead and fish those banks comfortably. But that wind just offers concealment for that larger than normal bass to come up and actually commit to your lure. So I encourage everyone here to instead, next time the wind starts blowing 12, 13 miles an hour, it gets a little uncomfortable, but every time the wind blows, I chomp at the bit to fish those perpendicular wind banks because those are opportunities for me to win by a lot, especially swimming a swim bait uphill. It's just recognizing those little scenarios and utilizing those little scenarios, sets KVD, sets Edwin Ebert, sets Tucker Smith, sets them apart from, your weekend fishermen. So those little things are things that you need to keep in mind when targeting, larger than normal bass. Man, that was a lot. What else we got? What? Yeah. I felt like I just read I just wrote a Bassmaster magazine right there. But and one thing too, okay, so the bass fishing handbook, right? Everyone knows the bass fishing handbook. Obviously, it doesn't exist, but we've heard that in the pre-spawn phase, oh, you got to go to the backs of the coves and fish the shallowest flats because they'll be spawning there. We're learning more and more, especially with forward-facing sonar, that largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, spotted bass don't go by the bass fishing handbook. We're starting to see more and more that fish love to suspend, hang out on the main lake of it doesn't matter if it's 2,300 acres or 30,000 acre lake. We're starting to see more and more, an abundance of bass living out towards the center of the lake and not going by that, back of the cove, back of the creek style handbook. Yes, we can catch fish back there, but we're starting to see more and more with the technology that fish actually live down on the lower ends of the lakes, out in the middle of channels, suspending over 40 feet of water, like we've never seen before. And I think this kid knows something about forward-facing sonar. He actually qualified for the Elite Series. And so let's say, how many tournaments did you fish qualifying for the Elite Series? 9?
9, yeah.
So let's call it, 9 tournaments. That's like 27 days worth of fishing. And, that times 5 fish a day. He weighted 5 fish each and every day to qualify for the Elite. How many of those fish did you catch on forward-facing sonar? Half and 3/4. And without it, you're looking through the bass fishing handbook saying, okay, where are these